On a cold night in 1987, someone did the impossible. They hacked live television. Millions watched. The FBI investigated. Nearly 40 years later, nobody knows who did it.
Imagine a real-life ghost in the machine. A moment where the secure, totally predictable world of network television was violently shattered by a rogue signal. Welcome to This Explainer, where today we're diving into a dark, unsolved mystery. We're looking at one of the most bizarre and chilling technological heists in broadcast history, a hack that has absolutely baffled the FBI, the FCC, and internet sleuths for decades. Picture this. You're sitting in the dark in 1987. It's a Sunday night in Chicago, you're watching TV, maybe just winding down before the work week starts. And then, suddenly, the screen goes black. The audio drops completely, and a distorted, masked figure breaks right into your living room. There's no internet to check, no smartphone to see what's trending online. You are simply trapped with whatever is broadcasting on your screen. That is exactly how this nightmare unfolded on the freezing night of November 22nd, 1987. And the Phantom didn't just strike once. The hijacker hit two entirely different Chicago stations, WGN and WTTW, just a couple of hours apart. Make no mistake, this wasn't a glitch. It was a highly coordinated two-part ambush on live, major market television. Act 1. The face of the hack. To really grasp the sheer creepiness of this attack, we have to look at the mask the intruder chose. They didn't go for a classic monster or a politician. They chose something way more unsettling for the dawn of the digital age. Max Headroom was a dystopian cyberpunk icon. Played by actor Matt Frewer in heavy prosthetics, Max was supposed to be a glitched-out AI from 20 minutes in the future. He was everywhere in the 80s, even pitching new Coke. So by wearing this specific mask, the hijacker was wrapping their crime in a thick, ironic layer of anti-corporate satire. It was the absolute perfect disguise. Act 2. The first intrusion. The first target was Chicago's Channel 9. At 9:14 p.m., sports anchor Dan Roan is casually recapping a Chicago Bears victory over the Detroit Lions. Without warning, the feed cuts to black. Then, this figure in a Max Headroom mask appears, swaying erratically in front of a rotating piece of corrugated metal, clearly trying to mimic the computer-generated background of the actual TV show. There's no voice at all, just a loud, piercing 10 kilohertz sync buzz. For about 15 to 25 seconds, it's total chaos, until a frantic engineering scramble at WGN successfully breaks the pirate signal's lock. They managed to switch their studio-to-transmitter link frequencies up at the John Hancock Center before the hackers could even broadcast a single word. When the feed snapped back to the news desk, Dan Rowan was totally bewildered, trying to laugh it off and assuming the master control computer had just lost its mind. It grounds us right in the unsettling reality of that exact moment. But the hacker's night was just getting started. Act 3. The WTTU takeover. 2 hours later, the Phantom returns. But this time, they have a terrifyingly clear microphone and a captive audience. The target shifts to WTTW, Chicago's PBS affiliate, right in the middle of a Doctor Who episode called Horror of Fang Rock. By striking a PBS station that had absolutely zero broadcast engineers on duty late on a Sunday night at their Sears Tower transmitter, the hackers secured a massive, uninterrupted full minute and a half of airtime. In the world of live TV, 90 seconds is an eternity. What actually unfolded on screen was pure, unadulterated absurdity. It was a chaotic, unhinged performance art piece broadcast directly into thousands of confused homes. The audio was heavily distorted and pitch-shifted, so the hacker sounded like some manic cyborg. He mocked WGN's Chuck Swirsky, calling him a frickin' liberal. He randomly hummed the theme to the 60s cartoon Clutch Cargo. He held up a Pepsi can while quoting the new Coke Catch the Wave slogan. At one point, he holds up a filthy gardening glove, rambling on about his brother wearing the other one. And then, in a totally surreal finale, the camera cuts to the hacker bent over, exposing his rear end, while a woman in a French-maid outfit spanks him with a fly swatter. Then, blackness. Doctor Who just casually resumed as if nothing had happened at all. Act 4. How they pulled it off. The big question here is, how does someone physically hijack a live television signal in a major metropolitan area? Remember, this wasn't a digital password hack. This was analog warfare. A legitimate TV station in 1987 used a microwave link to beam their video from the studio on the ground way up to massive transmission towers on skyscrapers, like the Sears Tower or the John Hancock Center. By hauling commercial-grade broadcast equipment onto a nearby Chicago rooftop, the attackers exploited the very physics of analog television. They simply got themselves physically closer to those receiving towers. They relied heavily on a principle called the FM capture effect. Think of it like a bank heist schematic, where they didn't even need to cut the station's wires. They just needed to broadcast a stronger, closer signal to completely overwrite the station's feed. Because microwave signal strength drops off exponentially with distance, a relatively low-power transmitter located on a high-rise apartment balcony right next to the Sears Tower would easily overpower the legitimate studio feed coming in from miles away. The execution here is just audacious. It required intense technical expertise and heavy, commercial-grade equipment. You literally couldn't just walk into a local electronics store and buy this stuff. You had to know exactly what frequencies the stations used, exactly how to align a parabolic dish, and you absolutely needed a direct, unobstructed line of sight to the receiver tower. Act 5. The Federal Investigation. Now, you can't just take over the airwaves in a major U.S. city without consequences. The FCC and the FBI immediately launched a massive hunt, but the trail quickly went ice cold. As FCC lead investigator Dr. Michael Marcus pointed out, despite its massive cultural impact, the crime itself was a victimless prank. There was zero physical damage, no lives were at risk, so the resources dedicated to it were limited. The feds had strong tips pointing to specific Chicago neighborhoods, but they seriously lacked the probable cause needed for search warrants. They couldn't just kick down people's doors looking for a rubber mask and a microwave dish. The investigation lost its momentum, and eventually the 5-year statute of limitations quietly expired in 1992. Act 6. The prime suspects. So if the feds couldn't catch them, who exactly is on our evidence board? Over the last few decades, a few key theories have popped up. First, you have the BBS hackers, known locally online as J and K. They had the eccentric humor, but they totally lacked the physical means to operate heavy 6 GHz rigs, and they were formally cleared. Then there's the inside job theory, disgruntled station engineers. They'd know the skeleton crew schedule, sure, but the professional risk of federal prison makes it highly unlikely they'd target 2 completely different networks in a single night. Some people pointed to avant-garde artist Eric Fournier, whose later video art perfectly matched this surreal style, but he had zero engineering skills and he lived in Indiana. Honestly, the third-party contractor theory aligns perfectly with the physical requirements of the crime. Someone who serviced these towers, had access to the gear, and knew the skyline geometries. But the absolute silence of the perpetrators, not a single whistleblower or confession in over 30 years, that is what has elevated this case to true mythic status. If you're sitting there wondering if someone could do this to your Netflix stream or your local news tonight, you can definitely rest easy. The 2009 digital switchover and the industry-wide move to closed fiber optic networks have made this exact analog microwave hack completely impossible today. That glaring vulnerability exploited on that cold November night is closed forever, locking the hijackers securely in the analog past. As we wrap up this explainer, I really have to ask you, what do you think happened? Was this an elaborate insider prank? Was it a furious tech worker lashing out at the broadcast industry? Or was it just a lucky ghost in the machine? The Max Headroom incident remains the ultimate unsolved television mystery, a 90-second fever dream that hijacked our reality and then simply disappeared into the static forever. So who do you think was behind the mask?